community of many genders and sexualities, a community of diverse cultural and racial and class backgrounds, a community of varied abilities and gifts. Some here find inspiration in the great books, others in the great outdoors, and others still in great conversations. Whoever you may be, we welcome you to bring your whole self into this community. My name is Amy Stock, and I serve as an officer on UUCA's Board of Trustees. Today is October 17th, and whether this is your first time visiting with us or this is your regular Sunday routine, we welcome you. Please join us for congregation and fellowship after the service outside on the main entrance ramp. If you're watching the service online and you're local, you're welcome to come by and join us for a personal connection. Or you can join our virtual coffee hour on Facebook after the service as well. As you may have heard, UUCA is preparing to restart the capital campaign we paused at the beginning of the pandemic, with a theme of Operation Liftoff, Reconnect, Recharge, Relaunch. The campaign planners are hosting a pre-flight briefing today following both services. There's no need to RSVP, just come to the boardroom down the hall to hear more about the campaign and how you can get involved. If you can't make an in-person briefing, no worries. The campaign will also be conducting pre-flight briefings over Zoom. You can find more information in our Connections e-newsletter or on the church's website at uucava.org. And finally, you can't have a pre-launch without an actual launch. So next Sunday, October 24th, join us for an outdoor ice cream social and tailgate picnic following the second service. Mark your calendars. We hope everyone can come. Thank you for coming today. We're so glad you're here. Welcome.
This Sunday is a little bit different in that we have two of our lay leaders with us to add their voices to those that come from the chancel, and we're celebrating UN Sunday. What is UN Sunday? United Nations Sunday celebrates the work of the United Nations and our Unitarian Universalist office at the United Nations, the UU at UN. Every year, UU congregations are encouraged to have a service or an event to celebrate UN Sunday. The 2021 theme is All In for Climate Justice, Food Equity, and Sustainability. Unitarian Universalists are extremely active on climate and food justice issues. Of particular note, I want to share with you the statement of conscience adopted by the UUA General Assembly in 2011. It's entitled Ethical Eating, Food, and Environmental Justice. Just a few key points. Aware of our interdependence, we acknowledge that eating ethically requires us to be mindful of the miracle of life we share with all beings. With gratitude for the food we have received, we strive to choose foods that minimize harm, that are protective of the environment, consumers, farmers, and all those involved in food production and distribution. Ethical eating is the application of our principles to our food choices. What and how we eat has broad implications for our planet and society at large. Our values, our principles, our integrity, it calls us to seek compassion, health, and to focus on sustainability in the production of the food we raise or purchase. Today, we're going to focus on how working for equitable and sustainable food systems can bring us closer to ending climate issues. This Sunday is a unique opportunity. We get to engage the congregation in reflecting and talking about the issues that should be near and dear to our hearts. Those are a lot of words. Actually, it's very simple. Hunger is real. Food deserts exist. Many go without proper nutrition, fresh vegetables, and a full plate at what we call 3 meals a day. Listen to those who are here today. Listen to their voices, listen to their ideas, and let's think seriously about creating steps that take us towards food equality. Marietta Tanner and David Shilton are going to share, not in lieu of a sermon, but to bring us something that couldn't really be sermonized. We needed more voices to talk about food injustice. So please take a breath in, let that breath out, and let us move deeper into worship this morning.
Together with Unitarian Universalists around the world this morning, we light our chalice. You may have noticed that the days are getting cooler and the light is already starting to change. This flame is one way to share light and warmth as our days continue balancing toward autumn. We gather together as a community of memory and hope to celebrate life and its infinite possibilities for love. And please join me. We light this chalice as a symbol of the light within every human heart. May our individual sparks meet and merge, bringing both light and warmth to the world.
One more step, we will take one more step till there is peace in them, and everyone will take one more step. One more word, we will say one more word till every word is heard by everyone. We'll say one more word. One more prayer, we will say one more prayer till every prayer is shared by everyone. We'll say one more prayer. One more song, we will sing one more song till every song is sung by everyone. We'll sing one more song.
Our wisdom lesson this morning is one that many of you will be familiar with, the story of stone soup. Once upon a time, there was a great famine, which means there wasn't enough food to simply go around. The people in one small village didn't have enough to eat, and definitely not enough to store away food through the winter. People were afraid. They didn't want their families to go hungry. So they hid the small amounts of food they did have away in their larders. They even hid food from their friends and neighbors. One day, a wandering soul came through the town. He went into the village and he said to several different people, "I'm simply looking for a place to eat and a place to lay my head this evening." "There's not a bite to eat in our entire country," someone said to him. "I'm sorry, I don't have any room for you to sleep tonight," another person said to him. "There is nothing here." "Oh, no. I have everything I need. I want you to share soup with me. And if there's a place for me to sleep after that, it would be wonderful." The townspeople wondered. He has everything he needs. "I have everything I need," that hardy soul said. And he reached in his knapsack and he pulled out a big white stone. I can do this. I can make soup for all of us. I can feed us. It's going to be amazing. By now, hearing about this magic stone that the stranger had pulled out, people began to gather. Most of the villagers surrounded him, and they looked at his red cooking pot. Well, you're going to need water in there to make soup, aren't you? Oh, yes. If someone has fresh water, that would be amazing. Well, I have water, one of the villagers said. And they rushed home to their house, and they brought back a big picture of gorgeous, lovely, clear spring water. Another villager said, you have a stone and you have water. Oh, yes. And by then, he was stirring. He went to his pot. He got this lovely wooden spoon from another villager, and he's stirring. There's a fire going on underneath this pot, folks, and the water is getting warm, and the stone is flavoring the water, right? This would be great soup. It's going to be the most amazing soup. There's going to be enough to feed us all. But if only I had a potato. And a woman in the back of those had gathered, scratched her head, and looked around and said, well, I have potatoes in my larder. I have one potato. I could spare one potato. And off she went to her larder, and she came back with not one, not two, but 3 gorgeous Yukon Gold potatoes. And we added those potatoes in, and the stranger continued to stir. Oh, this is smelling great. I've got rock broth and potatoes. Okay, this is going to be the best soup ever. But you know, if I had an avocado, it would be a little smoother. It would have a little fat in its base. And well, I have some avocados. I could share one, said a man from the back of the crowd. Could you share one avocado? And yeah, and off he went, and he comes back, and he brought a slightly dismal looking but whole avocado, and that went into the soup. And we stirred, and it's really smelling good now. And a woman in the back said, well, I have a little bit of thyme and oregano, and would that? Yes, anything you want to add, but it's going to be fine. We're going to have plenty to eat. And off she went, and she brought back the thyme and oregano. And now you get it. One by one, the stranger called for things. Wait, let's see. Oh, it should be fruity. Let's add some clementines. Those went in. Oh, a honey crisp apple. This with potatoes and clementines and avocado, delicious, and that goes in. Another small child came, and he said, well, my mom said you might want to squeeze a lemon so it has a little brightness. And in went the lemon juice. The last things that went in were organic yams and a cucumber. Don't laugh at the cucumber. Cucumber soup is an amazing thing. So the cucumber went in too. And it is boiling and bubbling, and we can smell the herbs and the rock broth. And oh gosh, it looks delicious. And that was it. One by one, he asked them to get a bowl and a spoon and come forward, and he served everyone in the village. And they sat on their stoops, and they sat on their front porches, and someone brought out a table with a tablecloth and put a candelabra on it, and it was a street party. Soup for everyone. From what? A stone? Soup from everyone, because they decided to work together. The stranger took the final bowl of soup for himself, and he sat a little bit away from everyone, and he ate his soup, and he watched them. He just wanted to be with them, but one by one, they came forward, and they paid tribute to him. They thanked him for the soup. They offered him a place to sleep. They offered him their guest room. They said, my guest room has its own bathroom. You'll be really comfortable. He had a place to sleep. He had an amazing bowl of soup, and he had built community. He had many offers for places to sleep that night from folks who had individually and in the beginning closed their doors to him. He slept well. The village slept well. Their bellies were full, and they were full of community. And the next day, the stranger got up, made sure the coals were put out, took his pot, took his stone, put them back in his knapsack, and went on about his way. Stone soup. It's an old story. It doesn't always have a cucumber. What it has is a really simple thread of meaning. We are stronger together than we are when separated. And between a village of folks, the most delicious soup can be made and shared. I give you stone soup.
Good morning, everyone. I am Marietta Tanner, the UCA envoy of the United Nations office in New York. That is the Unitarian Universalist United Nations office, not the United Nations itself. The United Nations will be 76 years old next Sunday, the 24th. Because of a special event next week, we are speaking on the subject today. We will have an afternoon virtual program on the 24th, to which I urge you to listen. See the ad in your connections, and I think it's in this program also, in your program. Our topic this year will be food equity and sustainability. We are proclaiming that food stability and equity are in our hands. Eating is a spiritual practice. Many people say grace before eating to give thanks and to acknowledge that turning the vegetables they ingest into nourishment for their bodies is a miracle and a blessing. Our concern now is to determine whether or not the foods we eat will be available in the abundance and variety we have become accustomed to. Will the California almonds we sliver on our Washington State salmon be available? They've been threatened by raging fires. The tomatoes we enjoy on our pizza and in just about every soup or salad have withered on the vine in drought-stricken areas of the West. And this is in the United States, where food produced on commercial agribusiness farms is generally available. We have been spoiled by this abundance, whether organic or frankenfood. We have not thought about the sustainability of the farming practices we use. For instance, think of the tractors to till the soil, overturning topsoil, much of which has been blown away. We are using pesticides that poison the air and kill natural pollinators, and seed that is altered to require prescribed fertilizers, seed that does not reproduce itself and must be purchased every year at great cost to the farmers. I attended the Unitarian Universalists at the United Nations Intergenerational Seminar this April and was introduced to Dr. Karamba Rinjera of Meru, Kenya. Her community has been ravished by AIDS, leaving orphans and dying mothers to try to survive on an abandoned wasteland. They reverted to ancient regenerative practices to convert the land to a food forest. Dr. Rinjera's people were subsisting on one-crop farms, beans or corn, from commercial seed. The corn ripened small and full of weevils, even while using imported pesticides that were poisoning the waters and producing a community with cancers they had never seen before. Farming for them became a spiritual practice. Dr. Rinjera had to rethink the systems of education, religion, and patriarchy under which they were living. My people have the right to healthy and culturally appropriate food, she said. To accomplish this, the dying mothers, rejected by their family because of the AIDS disease, had to learn to love themselves as productive human beings in order to feed their soon-to-be orphaned children. Dr. Injera had to revert to traditional ways of being, to use seeds, potash, and manure as her mother did, and a double disc digging system where topsoil is not lost by tilling. Now, she says, we are aligned with the divine, experiencing a holistic beingness, and the land is screaming with green abundance. The government of England is making plans to adapt their subsidies to remunerate farmers who practice a similar kind of permaculture, based on a system practiced by James Rebanks, whom you see on the screen. He uses his sheep, chickens, and cows to preserve and fertilize land, as well as to produce foodstuffs. The beautiful emblem on the screen is of Soulfire Farm in upstate New York. The workers are committed to uprooting racism, raising and distributing food to end food apartheid. Black people in the United States have been alienated from the lands for a reason you will hear about later. Leah Penniman, a Black woman and founder, said, "With deep reverence for the land and the wisdom of our ancestors, we work to reclaim our collective right to belong to the earth and to have agency in food production systems." They too practice a form of permaculture. Please read the handout in your program. It is a system of land use and cultivation which, according to its founder, David Holmgren, is based on 12 principles which, when applied together, allow us to redesign our environment and behavior in a world of less energy and resources. Actually, it recalls ancient principles of ethical behavior known to many cultures, now being revived as we face climate change. This way of thinking aligns perfectly with our Unitarian Universalist principles. What is the food culture within our faith? For us Unitarians, eating has become a spiritual practice. Reverend Cissel read the pledge taken at the General Assembly in 2011. Are we aware of it? Do we practice its ideas? We must ask ourselves, how can our congregation help change our food systems so that they are both sustainable and equitable? On small plots of land, we can develop and sustain food sovereignty projects using methods without harmful chemicals or seeds that require toxic fertilizer to generate. Can we, by what we eat, substantially reduce our carbon footprint? When we shop, do we select organic foods or fresh or frozen foods whose labels we read to be wary of harmful additives? Do we show our preference for locally grown produce? Where I live at Goodwin House, Bailey's Crossroads, our green team, headed by our own Jane McKeel, has worked with our dining staff to purchase reusable or recyclable containers and send to the composter biodegradable kitchen and table scraps. The residents send their scraps there too for composting and separate household waste, bottles and cans for recycling. In your own backyard, you can do permaculture based on these simple steps. You can plant like the planet depends on it, which it does. Your handout will show you how. Actually, my daughter has a tiny permaculture-type garden right off Patrick Henry in Falls Church that produced organic vegetables abundantly this summer, which I enjoyed. The United Nations Ministry for Earth talks of a drawdown project which will move us toward a plant-based diet. One of the Sustainable Development Goals seeks animal production reduction by 50% by 2040. At a recent UN Food Summit, participants from around the world declared that industrial animal agriculture and intensive farming practices are destroying the environment, contributing to climate change, and harming public health. 197 nations ratified the Paris Agreement on climate change. The regular meeting of that group, which will include the United States this year, will be in Glasgow, Scotland. President Biden is sending 13 cabinet-level delegates, some of whom will be speaking on next Sunday afternoon's conference. The purpose will be to scale up our response to meet the Sustainable Development Goals. The Conference of Parties, or COP26, begins October 31st and runs through November 12. For months now, citizens from cities as far-flung as Milan, Bogota, Auckland, Zurich, Johannesburg, and New York have been holding pre-conference protests. Greta Thurnberg, you heard a lot about her last year, this Youth for Climate Change activist said, all signs point to COP26 being more blah, 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 and no action. The protest groups will descend on Glasgow to assure that the 197 states take authentic actions against such things as fossil fuels and agribusiness to halt the international crisis. Only a body like the UN could bring together 197 nations to look for answers to this global problem. Our Unitarian Universalist office at the UN is your voice there and most deserving of your support. We mentioned Soul Food Farm, a Black collective dedicated to restoring Black people's relationship to the land. After the Civil War, many of the formerly enslaved owned large plots of land throughout the South, on which they hoped to become self-sufficient with their own labor. Later in the service, David Chilton will tell us what happened to that dream.
I want to offer you all a reflection. Excuse me, it's called Bringing Home the Bacon. This is an excerpt from a piece that was written by my colleague, the Reverend Michael Tino. Michael says, working to feed the hungry and obtain adequate food for poor people in our society has long been central to my own justice and service work. When I was in high school, I spent many weekends volunteering with a group called Youth Service Opportunities Project. Based in the Friends Meeting House near Union Square in Manhattan, this program brought together high school and college youth from the New York metro area. We did weekends of service to the homeless in New York City. With other teenagers, I prepared sandwiches for distribution at Grand Central Station after dark. I ran a Friday night soup kitchen on the Lower East Side and volunteered at sites around the area. We served the infamous welfare hotels of the time. We walked through cockroach-infested food distribution centers. We simply fed those who were in need. When I first joined the Unitarian Universalist congregation some 15 years ago in North Carolina, he goes on, I found the congregation busy at work on issues related to food and to hunger as well. Several of the ministries of that fellowship had to do with food, from working in a local food pantry to gleaning unmarketable sweet potatoes to fighting for justice for the millions of migrant farm laborers who were there in the state. Food issues in the metro New York area are no better today than they were when I was working there in high school. While the homeless are no longer allowed to congregate in the warmth of Grand Central Station after midnight, people, including the youth of fellowships, are still involved in programs to feed and clothe homeless folks in New York. We called our program Midnight Run because that's essentially what that program was. And the number of people who used it and are using it still continues to climb. At this time, there's only a couple of things we need to do. We must seek both short and long-term solutions to issues of food insecurity in this country and in our communities. People must be able to eat now, and they must have adequate access to nutritious food from now on. You might be wondering whether there aren't programs to help people who don't have enough food to eat. You know that program, food stamps? Well, there's programs like this, and they do exist, but they are woefully inadequate. Consider the hypothetical average family on the U.S. Department of Agriculture's website. This family of 4 has $1,500 a month in earned income. That's roughly $18,000 a year. They get a little bit from Social Security because of their low income, an amount that pretty much goes right out the door for any child care expenses they might have. You can imagine what they must spend on rent to live in New York City. Actual housing expenses are not part of the equation to receive food stamps. There's an ARC they use instead. This family that makes $18,000 a year doesn't own a car. If they did, the value of that car, if it's over $4,650, would be counted towards the $2,000 in total resources that families are allowed to own to be eligible for food stamps. Nor do they have any money in the bank. There is no savings. They are living paycheck to paycheck if they have a job. Believe it or not, this family earns entirely too much to be eligible for the maximum food stamp benefit. That's $588 a month for a family of 4. The program is prorated based on income, and what they end up getting is $239 a month, which works out to be a little under $2 per day per person in their family. The average food stamp benefit for those poor enough to be eligible for its assistance until recently was $1 per person per meal. That's Michael. This is me. $1 per person for a meal. If you're a family of 4, what can you eat for $4 a meal? Actually, the cheapest thing for folks to eat is fast food. There's a reason that the specials at McDonald's and at Burger King and at Taco Bell are 99 cents. It's cheaper to eat terrible, unedible fast food than to even try to buy fresh groceries or basics like rice and potatoes and pasta. I go back to Michael. When was the last time you had a meal that only cost $1 for all of the ingredients you were going to consume? I'd like you right here and now to start thinking about ways in which we can help implement sustainable solutions to food security issues in this community. What are the long-term solutions this community could bring to the table? How can we help people have enough food to eat and food that has an adequate nutritional value? I think together this church and fellowships across the country can make a huge difference in food sustainability and in food equity. From the very beginning, the UUA has recognized that there were many issues wrapped up in the topic of ethical eating: economic security issues, issues of race, of class, and oppression, and issues of trade, labor, and yes, climate change. We are moving towards food security and environmental justice, and the steps we have to take to move in that direction are for each of us to take, individually and as a community.
Thank you, Marietta and Rev CTC, for prompting us to consider the food practices of our faith and how they're a concern for justice. I'm always inspired by folks who resist unjust systems through their relationship with the earth and the interdependent web of life. And this work requires resources. Here at UUCA, we have a rich tradition of taking action for social justice within the community. And working for social justice is an essential part of our faith and a way to reconcile our ethics with the world. This October, our Share the Plate recipient is the UUCA Social Justice Projects Fund. Your gifts today will be used to support UUCA's small social justice activities or pilot programs. Activities like chartering a bus to go to a rally, or sponsoring our National Coming Out Day and Rainbow Crosswalk. And if you haven't seen the crosswalk, you should definitely check it out after the service today. Or purchasing ingredients to prepare meals for the unhoused. Please know that today's offering will be split. 70% is directly for the Share the Plate recipient, the UUCA Social Justice Projects Fund, and 30% will support the ongoing work of UUCA. Your offering allows UUCA to assist and enrich the lives of others. We want to make it simple for you to give, so you can easily offer help by using one of the methods listed on our website at uucava.org, or on your screen if you're at home, or in the order of service printed in your pamphlet. Again, thank you for supporting UUCA. We're very grateful. And ushers, if you'd please take the offering. The ushers could come forward. The music today has been wonderful. I just want to thank Topher and Christian. It's just been phenomenal. Thank you. So please join me in blessing the offering. Let us be grateful when we are able to give, for many do not have that privilege. Let us be grateful for those who share their gifts with us, for we are enriched by their giving. Let us be grateful even for our needs, so that we may learn from the generosity of others. So I invite you to pause together. This has been a lot to take in this morning so far. Let's pause in a moment of meditation and reflection, or in a posture that orients you to this moment. You're invited to settle into your body and all the stories that it's telling you this morning. Your body's stories are welcome here, and you are welcome here. For today's meditation, we are hearing History's Road by Marjorie Bowens-Wheatley and Clyde Grubbs, two great elders of the faith. The road of history is long, full of both hope and disappointment. In times past, there have been wars and rumors of wars, violence and exploitation, hunger and homelessness, and destruction of this earth, your creation. We have become a global village with a growing realization of how fragile this earth is and how interconnected we are to each other and to all creation. We cannot continue to live in the old way. We must make a change, see a new way, a way toward peace with justice and a healthy planet. O great creative spirit, you have given a vision of the good, and we yearn for a new way. But where are we to find the courage to begin this work? We know that a different tomorrow is possible, but how can we build it? We think of the prophets, women and men who voiced unpopular opinions, who made personal sacrifices and sometimes lost their lives for the sake of justice. We think of Isaiah, who called out to let those who are held in captivity go free, to give solace to the poor and homeless. Let us be inspired by all who work to overcome misery, poverty, and exploitation. We think of Harriet Tubman, who called out people of goodwill to join her on an underground railroad to lift a dehumanized people from the bondage of slavery to the promise of freedom, even when it meant challenging unjust laws. Let us be inspired by those who are outlaws for freedom. We think of Gandhi, whose belief in soul force, the witness to love's truth, helped to overthrow the oppression of an empire and gave witness to the way of nonviolent action. Let us be inspired to become witnesses for peace. We think of Chief Seattle, who reminded us that we belong to the earth, not the earth to us. Let us be inspired by all those who work for the healing of creation, of Mother Earth and all her creatures. Who are the prophets that inspire you? They may be well known, or known only to you, offering personal inspiration, courage, and hope. May they join a great cloud of witnesses to a new way of life, the way of peace and justice, the way of justice lived according to the way of peace, the beloved community. So may it be. Amen.
justicia de la vida. Arraigame, libérame, fuente de amor, ven a mí, ven a mí, Spirit of life, come unto me, sing in my heart all the stirrings of compassion, blow in the wind, rise in the sea, move in the hand, giving life the shape of justice. Roots hold me close, wings set me free. Spirit of life, come to me, come to me.
Good morning, everyone. I'm David Shilton. Some of you probably remember our daughter, Anne Claire, who grew up in this church. 9 years ago, she married a National Park Service ranger in a beautiful ceremony presided over by Reverend Carlton Smith. 3 years ago, Anne Claire and Chris bought a farm on the Cumberland Plateau in northern Tennessee. The farm's beautiful, but the pastures were overgrazed and weedy, and the creeks had been trampled by cattle. Mary and I spent much of the past 18 pandemic months down on the farm, helping with farm chores and watching as Anne Claire and Chris tried to make the farm a place that sequesters carbon in the soil rather than releasing it to the air, and that's friendly to native pollinators and birds, and maintains high water quality in the creek, and provides a sustainable supply of healthy organic eggs and honey and turkeys to their neighbors who purchase those items. Regenerative farming like that is a lot of work. Believe me, it's a lot of work. But seeing the place alive with butterflies and birds and pollinators and eating the healthy produce from it makes it all very worthwhile. I hadn't thought a lot about the techniques that they were using to care for the farm, where they came from, like raised bed gardens, rotational grazing for their sheep and cows, and crop rotation. But then I did some research in connection with advocacy that I was doing with Unitarian Universalists for Social Justice. We were working on the Justice for Black Farmers Act. And I found out that these sustainable farming techniques long predated the organic farming movement that we're familiar with. Many, like planting several compatible crops in one place to attract a variety of beneficial insects and to reduce pests, have Native American roots. Others, including raised bed gardening and crop rotation and sweet potato culture, come from traditional African agricultural practices. Indeed, African farmers were often targeted for kidnapping by slave traders, specifically because of their great skill in growing crops like rice. In addition, African American scientists like George Washington Carver pioneered methods of crop rotation and the use of cover crops to restore depleted soil. Booker T. Whatley, who like Carver taught at the Tuskegee Institute, pioneered regenerative farming techniques and developed the concepts of pick-your-own farms and farm share programs in order to make small organic farms viable economically. So more recently, communities like Soulfire Farm that Marietta mentioned, that we learned about in the intergenerational UN seminar this spring, have developed a model of training young Black and brown farmers in Afro-Indigenous farming methods. At the same time, they make healthy produce available to communities located in urban food deserts and making food available to those who have food shortages. sort of a very large version of stone soup. With all these contributions to American agriculture, you might think that our country would have treated African American and indigenous farmers with the respect that they deserve. But tragically, the opposite has been the case. After the Civil War, black farmers overcame Jim Crow laws, hostility of white farmers, and often outright violence to acquire farms, mostly small, mostly in the South. By the 1910s, around 200,000 black farmers owned an estimated 20 million acres of land in the United States. But by the 1990s, the number of black farmers had plunged 98%, and those remaining had managed to hold on to just 10% of the acreage owned earlier in this century. Today, less than 2% of farm acreage is owned by African Americans. What had happened? Well, outright discrimination on the part of federal and state governments played a big role in this enormous loss of lands. Court cases have found consistent and rampant discrimination against black farmers in the denial of U.S. Department of Agriculture loans, which are often granted as a matter of course to white farmers. Few black farmers have had access to lawyers, and most have died without wills. Their land becomes what is known as heirs' property, divided equally among sometimes numerous heirs. The unclear title to land that this creates makes it difficult, much more difficult, to get commercial loans, and has led to a lot of land being lost to speculators and developers. Senator Cory Booker of New Jersey and Senator Raphael Warnock of Georgia have sponsored proposed legislation known as the Justice for Black Farmers Act that would address these injustices in several ways. One provision involving loan forgiveness for black and other families of farmers of color managed to get slipped into the COVID relief package that passed earlier this year. However, its implementation has been blocked by lawsuits brought by some white farmers, making the rather preposterous claim that white farmers are the victim of discrimination. Other provisions of the Justice for Black Farmers Act would boost funding for a program to address the heirs property issue and would provide money to U.S. Department of Agriculture to acquire land and grant up to 168-acre parcels to new farmers of color. The bill would also increase funding to programs that promote locally focused agriculture, supporting farmers markets, and increased funding to historically black colleges and universities for agricultural research into climate-friendly agricultural practices. Marietta mentioned several things that UUs can do to further food equity. Certainly, buying from farmers who utilize regenerative farming methods, especially farmers of color, either at your farmer's market or through a farm share, is a good way to support food equity. Something else we can do is to live our UU fifth principle by engaging in the democratic process. This spring, folks from this church and other UU churches across the country participated in UUSJ's letter writing campaign in support of the Justice for Black Farmers Act. And some of you joined in Zoom meetings with Senate staffers. While passing the Justice for Black Farmers Act would be a significant victory for racial justice, we quickly realized that the road ahead is not an easy one. The best chance for this legislation to pass is probably to get it attached to the next 5-year authorization of the Farm Bill, and we need to work on that. Passage of the Justice for Black Farmers Act is not only essential for rectifying a glaring injustice, it would also help address the climate crisis because it contains a number of strong incentives for climate-friendly agricultural practices. We and our faith allies need to continue pushing for good legislation like this. Finally, food equity and climate justice are, of course, international issues. Next Sunday, as Marietta mentioned, the Washington area UU at UN office has put together a great panel on food equity issues, including some of the United States delegates to the Glasgow COP conference on climate change. And you'll find a link to that great program in your connections, and I hope some of you can join us there. Thank you.
by inch, row by row. Gonna make this garden grow. Gonna mulch it deep and low. Gonna make it fertile ground. Inch by inch, row by row. Please bless these seeds I sow. Please make them safe below till the rain comes tumbling down. Pulling weeds, picking stones. We are made of dreams and bones. Need a spot to call my own. The time is close at hand. Grain for grain, sun and rain. Find my way in nature's chain. Tune my body and my brain to the music of the land. Inch by inch, row by row. Please make this garden grow. Gonna mulch it deep and low. Make it fertile ground. Inch by inch, row by row. Please bless these seeds I sow. Keep them safe below till the rain come tumbling down. Plant your rows straight and long. Season them with prayer and song. Mother Earth will keep you strong. You give her love and care. Friend crow sitting next to me. It's the way that the place to be. In my garden I'm as free as any feathered feet up there. Inch by inch, row by row. Please bless these seeds I sow. Make them row by row. Gonna make it fertile ground. Inch by inch, row by row. Please bless these seeds I sow. Please keep them safe below till the rain comes tumbling down.
Food deserts are real. Food insecurity exists. The fight for food justice has not been won. I leave this place knowing that changing these things is in your hands, is within our grasp, I'd rather say. There are possibilities that exist for us to make sure that no child goes to bed hungry, that people are once again working the land that belonged to their ancestors, and that we all are thriving, not just surviving. As you leave this morning, I offer you this blessing. May the rose ride to meet you. May the wind be at your back. May the sun shine warm upon your faces, and may the rains fall soft upon your fields. And until we are together again, may goodness, kindness, and love move through you, exist around you, and work with your hands. Go into this week with joy and love and laughter, and know that everyone that is sitting next to you this morning wants to be in relationship with you. Amen.
Just one grain on a beach of sand. No more rough, no less grand. Settled for a while at the waterline, rolling in and out of the wheels of time. Do you sometimes think you must save the world, then feel overwhelmed? Task absurd. Instead, help just one friend in one small way, and you'll have made a difference each and every day. With just one grain on a beach of sand, no less rough, no more grand. Settled for a while at the waterline, rolling in and out of the wheels of time.